All right, let's go to the escalating situation in the Middle East. Iran firing directly into Israel, a barrage of missiles overnight. Benjamin Netanyahu, in typical fashion, vowing to continue to defend Israel. Joining me now to discuss this and more, foreign editor at The Australian, Greg Sheridan. I'll get into the detail in a moment, but just I've got to go to that front page of the Australian newspaper, your paper today, Greg. I think that's the low point for the Albanese government. I think that's the low point, I have to say, for Australian foreign policy for many, many years. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think the front page dramatically demonstrated just how utterly hopeless, completely out of its depth, and without principle or coherence the Albanese government is on this whole crisis. So Joe Biden is generally a weak and dithering president, but he understands that if you've got a contest between murderous terrorists filled with anti-Semitic and anti-Western hatred on one side and a democracy on the other, you generally favour the democracy. And although Biden had indeed called for a ceasefire, he said that the US backed Israel's efforts to remove and destroy Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure on its borders. Now, our paper asked Penny Wong whether the foreign minister, whether the Australian government also supported Israel's actions to destroy Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure, which threatens October 7 massacres and which fires 9,000 rockets at Israel in the last 11 months. And she came out with that blather about supporting a ceasefire and diplomacy. It seems to me the Albanese government is so cowardly that it won't be caught dead saying a word in solidarity with Israel. This places it not only at odds with Israel, our great friend and ally, not only at odds with the United States, our ally and our only security guarantor, but at odds with social democratic governments like that in Britain and Canada. They have much more backbone than the Albanese government, which looks like a group of Tammany ward healers who just could barely find the Middle East on a map.
And at odds with Labor Party history. I mean, Bob Hawke famously said, if the bell tolls for Israel, it tolls for all mankind. OK, so where we are tonight, we've got Iran firing directly into Israel, Netanyahu vowing to respond. What happens next?
Well, a lot of us thought Iran would be pretty discreet in its attacks on Israel because it was unable to get through when it's fired missiles in April, and it's been unable to get through this time. It fired about 180 ballistic missiles. None of them caused major damage, but there's a tremendous danger for Israel in this every time this happens. I mean, a missile will get through eventually and kill a lot of Israeli civilians. But last time, Israel responded with a symbolic strike under the urging of the Biden administration. I think there's a lot of stuff happening below the waterline between the Biden administration and the Israelis. I think the fact that Biden swung round to supporting the Israelis probably means that they were able to get some suggestion from the Israelis on the limits of their operations in Lebanon. But I think Israel will have to respond to Iran. And you know, Brett Stevens in the New York Times, the Labor Party could do worse than read the New York Times, that bastion of left-wing opinion, is saying the United States and Israel both need to respond harshly to Iran. Iran runs all these terrorist groups all over the Middle East, has got very active campaigns to murder Donald Trump, sponsors murder and death through Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. The Houthis directly attack US shipping and it pays no price for it. Well, now, Israel and the United States both, I think, will look very seriously at making a serious assault on Iran. That may involve Iran's nuclear facilities. It may involve its missile manufacture facilities. It may involve other infrastructure. But Netanyahu's threats lately have not been hollow. And he said that Israel will attack the forces that attack Israel. This is the second big attack by Iran on Israel. Again, our government is kind of utterly pathetic in its silence. It condemns Iran's attack, but won't even say that Israel is right to respond in any way. But I suspect that we will see a big Israeli response, and this will be, I should think, supported by the Americans, perhaps actively with military assets which are in the region.